On today's Toy Spot, why we're having a look at the Mattel DC Comics Unlimited Injustice Superman. On the side of the package, based on the game from the creators of Mortal Kombat Injustice Gods Among Us, available in April 2013. Yes, Spot realizes it's past 2013. Spot just recently picked this up. Have already completed the story mode of Injustice and quite enjoyed it. Saw these figures at a local comic book store and decided I definitely wanted to pick them up. I think there were figures that Spot was really on the fence with initially picking up, and I wasn't quite sure how I felt about them overall. But I think after playing the game, my desire to pick up the figures was a lot greater than before. On the side, we have a picture of Superman with his heat vision. Very nice. And we flip over the back of the package. That same image is featured on the back. It says these figures feature designs based on an exciting new game from DC Comics. From the creators of Mortal Kombat Injustice Gods Among Us, allows you to control the incredible powers of DC Comics' greatest icons in a battle of epic proportions. To learn more, you can visit www.injustice.com. Also available from the good folks at Mattel, we have Injustice the Joker, as well as Injustice Green Lantern. Spot picked up the Joker, but I actually did not see Green Lantern anywhere. So maybe if I see him, I will likely pick him up. The very brief read-up, statistics, well, his real name is Clark Kent Kal-El. Occupation is journalist and hero. Location, Metropolis. Powers, abilities, and skills. His strength, speed, invulnerability, flight, heat vision, x-ray vision, and freezing breath. What I am going to do is I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get this opened up, and when we come back, we're going to get a better look at the DC Comics Unlimited Injustice Superman. Don't go anywhere. More on the way. And based really on a game that's reimagining the DC Universe, you're really getting also figures that are being reimagined from existing, well, new molds versus what we would have gotten with standard DC Universe figures. You're getting a much more slender, detailed, I would say, Superman than what we would have gotten with DC Universe figures. Now, I'm going to put that down just for a second. I'm going to put the Injustice Superman down. And just as a comparison, reaching off camera here, I'm going to bring in, I've got long-haired Superman from the DC Universe line. You can see between the two, now this would be a standard DC UC body, you can see between the two, Injustice Superman is much more slender, maybe not as much in the muscular department as what Superman here has. Definitely a very different kind of figure. I don't know if necessarily you would need to or want to probably put these in the same display, because there is very much a stark contrast between the two. It's very likely that if you're picking up Injustice Superman, you're probably going to be picking up other Injustice figures, and you're probably going to have those on display on their own. And then if you're collecting DC Universe figures also, those would probably be in their own, in their own section of your shelf or cabinet, as it were, depending on where you display your figures. I display mine on shelves, so I'm going to move this figure out of the way because I'm not really reviewing Superman. Well, I am reviewing Superman, but not a DC Universe standard Superman. So how does Spot feel about this figure? Again, as I had indicated before, it was a figure that I was really on the fence with, and when I saw initial pictures of it before playing the game, I thought to myself, really, I have no interest in this whatsoever. I will admit, though, as I've gotten into the game and beaten the story mode and played a little more of the game, I think my interest in this figure has warmed up a lot more than what it had. It's probably one of these figures that really is divided by whether you've played the game or not. If you haven't played Injustice, you probably will have the same feeling as me. You'll look at this and you'll think to yourself, okay, Superman doesn't have shoulder pads, doesn't have the armor-plated Superman shield. What is going on? Maybe then when you start playing the game, again, you're going to probably go back and say to yourself, you know what? I like the design of it. It's not Superman of our world necessarily. So therefore, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick up this figure because I really enjoyed the game. So I would think maybe the deal breaker for this figure is whether you've played the game or not. The face on Superman is very different than what we've gotten with other DC Universe figures. It's much more slender. It's almost, I don't even want to say more stylized, but it's definitely got much finer features than that of the DC Universe, the regular Superman figures that we've gotten. I think they have a lot more detailing, whereas the other DC Universe figures maybe are a little more basic in the costumes. The Injustice figures, I really feel like there's a lot more detailing in the figures. This upper shoulder pad area, if you want to call it that, is very different. It almost has a leather feel to it, and it's got a sheen to it too, whereas the rest of the body is more of just a matte color. It attaches itself to his cape, and actually that darker crimson outlines his cape as well, outlining it to a very different cape than what we've gotten with Superman. Usually Superman, it either V's down into a rounded out V, or it usually is just flat across. This Superman is very different. It peaks in the middle and then points on the sides. So that's one thing that's really interesting about this figure too. There's the back detailing. Zoom the camera in there. Not to zoom into Superman's buttocks, but you can see there's a lot of detailing, some detailing that you would have missed by having the cape down. It kind of has some feeling, I think I'm getting, some feeling of like New 52 Superman, where it's more armor than it is just a straight out suit. He's got that dark crimson carrying around into his lower legs, which really, as a point that somebody else has made too, kind of mirrors itself to the underoos that we've gotten with previous Superman designs. It's kind of a more of an alien organic approach to a red underoo by having the red on the interior of the legs and then in the lower section of the torso of Superman. I'm not quite sure really what's going on with his upper torso though, and perhaps this is where it lends itself more to armor and not as a skin-fitted suit. The muscling on the side makes some sense, but then when you get to the section in the middle here, perhaps this is probably more so where this would be an armor piece and less a spandex suit. Though he is muscular in the arms, his arms are a little more slender than what we've gotten with other Supermans too. I mean, this is a much sleeker Superman than other Superman figures. When you get down to his boots, they're more, I really don't want to keep going back to an alien approach, but it's got a more alien organicness to it with the treads as well. The legs I like because they have a lighter red as well as this dark crimson, kind of just breaking up where it's not just one coloring, and that helps to bring out a lot of those details too, is by having the two different colors. One thing I also really like is that his one hand is open. The other hand is closed, and sometimes you get really tired with Superman figures where they're always a closed fist. You have two closed fists, whereas at least this one, you've got the open hand as well. In the way of his articulation, he actually has a very rewarding joint in his head where you can move his head up and down, left and right, and there's really absolutely nothing obstructing his head. Some DC Universe figures' heads become a little problematic where you can't really move them too much, but you can clearly see, like, Superman's got a lot of movement in his head. The shoulders are not obstructed at all by the shoulder pads that he's got on his suit, so they can move out. You can even have Superman almost as if he's going to haul off and just kind of, super punch whatever he is fighting or whoever he is fighting. Now, the interesting thing is, even though it's a DC Universe figure, or under that title of a DC Universe figure, it surprisingly has no articulation in the bicep, which is something that caught me off guard. Instead, he only has a bend in the elbow, and it doesn't even rotate. Well, I shouldn't say that. It bends at the elbow, but then he's got a rotational swivel in the forearm as well, which is fine, but you're not necessarily going to have Superman with his forearm down. You're probably going to have it on its side, And being that you already have a swivel and a hinge in the hand, it makes no sense as to why you're going to have a swivel in the forearm like that. You're not going to necessarily swivel the forearm and then maybe swivel the hand. You might, but I mean, I'm surprised that they got rid of the bicep swivel. And maybe it lends itself to the fact that they didn't want to break up the sculpt in the forearm or in the bicep area. Perhaps that might be the only reason I can think of that why they would have done that. Something else that's omitting from this figure is he has no upper torso crunch. In fact, he only has a swivel in the waist. The legs go forward and back and out, so that's still common with other DC Universe figures. He does have a bend and a rotational swivel in the boot. He also has a swivel also in his thigh. I don't know why you would need to necessarily have it swivel twice, but again, it's there. And he also has that hinged foot. Quite a lot of hinge, I might add. He could have benefited really from a display stand, something that you could have had him, you know, levitating, almost as if he's going to attack. He doesn't really have that, but at least you can get a lot of poses out of him. Would I recommend him? It's debatable. This is not really the Superman that you're used to seeing, and in fact, I don't necessarily love Injustice. I don't really love the Injustice designs, all of them. I mean, there's some of them that are still really jarring for me. Superman, surprisingly, was one of the ones that I had the least problem with. Batman, on the other hand, I still have issues with that design. Superman, I think, really, as Spot had already indicated, benefited from the fact that I played the game. If you didn't play the game, then picking up this Superman, you might likely pass. You'll pick him up and you'll look at him and say, oh my God, what have they done with Superman? And you'll put him back on the shelf. I think once you play the game, you probably will have a little more of a love for the figure than before, and therefore I would say he's worth picking up. He's definitely a different Superman, but still a Superman surprisingly rewarding. For that reason, I'm going to give Injustice Superman here a 6.5. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the DC Comics Unlimited. We're having a look today at Injustice Superman. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.